This episode is provided by Thomas Allgeier and Frennis, based on the most relevant LinkedIn posts about commercial fleets in calendar weeks 20 and 21. Frennis is a B2B market research company that supports automotive suppliers with building feature-by-feature competitive intelligence that shows exactly how their product stacks up against the competition. You can find more info in the description.
So, I want you to just imagine for a second that you're signing this massive purchase order.
Right, like for a whole new fleet of, state-of-the-art electric heavy-duty trucks.
Exactly. You've run all the total cost of ownership models. You've hit your sustainability targets. The PR team is just absolutely thrilled.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And then the vehicles actually arrive at your depot.
Yeah.
But standing there in the yard, you realize this terrifying operational truth. You literally cannot plug them in.
Not today, not tomorrow. Possibly not for 3 whole years, which is just an absolute operational nightmare.
It really is. But I mean, for a ton of mobility professionals right now, that is the literal reality on the ground.
Yeah.
The vehicles have basically outpaced the concrete and the copper.
Yeah, they really have. Well, welcome to the deep dive. Today we're cutting through all the noise to unpack the absolute top commercial fleet trends that we saw across LinkedIn in calendar weeks 20 and 21.
Right. So if you're, managing a fleet or engineering the tech that supports them, these are exactly the ground level conversations you need to be tracking.
Exactly. We're leaning on insights from industry leaders who are actively in the trenches right now. And our mission today is to, explore 3 central themes, rewiring the whole mobility industry.
Yeah, so first up is electrification infrastructure and why the grid and not the vehicle itself is your primary bottleneck.
Right. And second is AI and telematics, which is basically the end of the quote-unquote dead dashboard. We'll look at how fleets are moving from just staring at data to actually executing automated action.
And third is fleet safety. How risk mitigation is moving way beyond just a compliance checklist and turning into staggering financial ROI.
Yeah, massive numbers there. But let's jump straight into that first theme, electrification infrastructure. Because we hear so much industry chatter about the sticker price of electric trucks, right?
Absolutely. Debates over range anxiety, payload capacities, all of that.
Yeah. But looking at the latest insights from flight operators, focusing all your attention on the truck itself is just entirely the wrong starting point.
It really is. I mean, look at what George Diaz shared recently. He completely reframes the timeline.
He does. He points out that the real bottleneck slowing down a transition isn't, negotiating the EV cost. It's the depot layout. It's the route reanalysis.
Right, and the grid capacity upgrades. He advises fleets to start talking to their facilities teams a minimum of 2 years before they even put down a deposit.
2 years minimum, just to start the conversation. Because if you wait until the regulatory mandate hits, you've already lost the timeline.
Exactly. Because fleets look out the window, they see a utility substation down the street, and they just assume the industrial power is sitting there waiting for them.
Which brings up that perfect real-world example from Natasha Fry over at Murr. A large retail organization did exactly that, right?
Yeah, they saw the local substation, put in a feasibility request for their depot, and 30 days later, the utility replies.
And they say, sure, we have the power, but it doesn't reach your site. To get it to you, we have to route a high-voltage cable straight through an existing housing estate.
Which is just, the quote for that trenching work was millions of dollars.
Millions. Which instantly destroys the business case, obviously. A 7-figure utility upgrade is just an unworkable CapEx.
Right, but that's exactly where the industry is getting super smart. They didn't pay for the $1 million cable. They didn't force a hardware solution. They went to software.
Yeah, instead of building a massive new 10-lane highway for electricity, they just got a really smart traffic cop. Natasha explained how they use dynamic load balancing.
Which, just for context, isn't just scheduling software. It actively monitors the electrical draw of the whole facility in real time.
Right, so if the warehouse HVAC system kicks into high gear, the software instantly throttles down the charging speed to the trucks.
Exactly. So they never tripped the main breaker. They just diverted energy precisely when and where it was needed using the limits they already had.
No $1 million trenching required. But let me play devil's advocate for a second here.
Go for it.
Optimization sounds amazing when you have a baseline of power to manage. But what if a depot has literally 0 electrical headroom left?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
Software can't magically create electricity, right? If the grid is maxed out, aren't you just stuck waiting half a decade for a utility upgrade anyway?
That is a very real constraint. And it's exactly the bottleneck Joachim Loos addressed in his recent breakdown. The answer to that zero headroom problem is BES, battery energy storage systems.
Ah, right. So instead of waiting years for the utility, fleets just install industrial-scale batteries directly on site?
Think of it like a water tower, right? If you have a tiny low-pressure pipe from the city, you can't fill 50 fire trucks at once.
But if you let that tiny pipe trickle into a massive water tower 24 hours a day, you can just dump it all into the trucks when they arrive.
That's a perfect analogy for BES. Joachim noted that pairing these storage systems with intelligent software gives fleets a 43% increase in vehicle throughput.
Without upgrading the grid connection.
Right.
And they're seeing, what, a 73% drop in energy costs?
Yeah, because they avoid peak demand charges completely. They capture cheap off-peak power at night, store it, and push it into the trucks during peak daytime hours.
Bypassing the utilities pricing surges entirely. And the physical hardware for this is evolving so fast. Innobi Hufut highlighted Shell's new Recharge Power Pack 500.
Which is such a strategic development. It's this modular DC fast charging solution.
Right, so a depot can start small, like just 2 charge points, and gradually scale up to 6 as the fleet grows.
Entirely avoiding a full depot teardown. And taking flexibility even further. Look at Anthony Okurubito's update on B-Charged EV.
Oh, the mobile bumble units.
Yes. Picture a 65 kilowatt DC fast charger with its own 200 kilowatt hour onboard battery, completely self-contained.
You literally drive it directly to a stranded vehicle on the highway, or just maneuver it around a crowded logistics yard.
Right, so if a delivery van comes back undercharged, you don't tow the van, you drive the charger to the van.
Which fundamentally changes uptime reliability. But, we need to ask why fleets are doing all this complex planning in the first place.
It always comes down to raw economics. The tipping point isn't theoretical anymore, it's highly mathematical.
The math is undeniable. Selene Parlak ran the numbers on a 100-vehicle fleet in the Bay Area over just 90 days.
Right, because regional gas prices surge, right, from like $4.50 to over $6 a gallon.
Yeah. So that combustion fleet spent about $202,000 on fuel. But she calculated that if they'd been running EVs on a commercial rate, it would have cost $61,000.
Wow. So they would have saved $141,000 in just 3 months.
Exactly. And that's just North America. Gavin Mooney pointed out an astonishing shift in China.
Right. Analysts always assumed heavy trucks would be the absolute last segment to electrify because of, weight and physics.
But projections for December 2025 show battery-powered trucks surpassing 50% of monthly sales in China.
Half the heavy market. That just defies all the traditional timeline.
Oh, it really does. And it's driven entirely by falling battery prices and cheap commercial electricity, saving operators there roughly $165,000 per truck over 10 years.
And meanwhile, Piotr Polak noted that Africa's EV imports more than doubled recently. Ethiopia even banned the import of combustion vehicles entirely.
Which makes total macroeconomic sense for them. They have a 90% renewable energy grid. An EV owner there spends like $4 a month on charging versus $27 on liquid fuel.
It's a margin defense strategy on a national scale. But, transitioning to these fleets introduces a whole new headache. Managing the physical vehicles is one thing. Managing the data they produce is another.
Which brings us perfectly to our second theme, AI and telematics and the end of the dead dashboard.
If you work in logistics, you know the feeling. You log into your portal and you're just drowning in charts, fault codes, alerts.
Yeah, it's a dead dashboard because the data just sits there. It requires a human to spend hours digging for a signal. But AI is completely changing that dynamic.
But we need to clarify how it's changing things. Jan and Seiler made a crucial distinction here. Smart fleets aren't waiting for some magical, fully autonomous AI.
No, they're deploying it right now to make their existing human experts go further. Victor Gonzalez at Flevo echoed that perfectly.
Yeah, he pointed out that fleet teams are exhausted by all the AI transformation buzzwords. They just want AI to do the practical, boring, administrative jobs.
Exactly. Cross-referencing fuel receipts with GPS timestamps to flag a duplicate charge. Spotting a hidden maintenance pattern across 50 vehicles.
Cutting out hours of manual entry. It's AI as a teammate, not an oracle. David Pruzinski shared a brilliant example of this with VMS launching VC.
Right, VIC acts as an AI fleet teammate because historically a telematics system just shows a red dot on a map for a breakdown.
But VIC takes it so much further. It identifies the diagnostic issue, checks the area for the fastest repair shop, and automatically sources a temporary replacement vehicle in seconds.
Turning a raw analytic into a logistical action. And what's wild is that sometimes the best interface for this isn't even a dashboard.
Oh, like M.R. Baksh's example. He shared this use case where an engineering team used N-E-N automation to build an AI agent for fire truck maintenance.
And they embedded it right inside WhatsApp.
Such a smart architectural decision. For context, N8 is a workflow automation tool, like digital glue between software.
Right, and fire departments often rely on paper logs or clunky legacy software. But inside WhatsApp, the barrier to entry is zero.
A mechanic just texts, generate readiness report, or truck 12 health status. And the AI pulls telemetry from the maintenance system, translates it, and texts back in plain English.
Making AI invisible to the end user. But to fuel these tools, you need pristine data. Johan Hendricks pointed out that OEMs are finally embedding telematics hardware directly at the factory.
Which is a monumental shift. Fleet managers don't have to debate aftermarket vendors anymore or take trucks out of service for complex installations.
The vehicle rolls off the lot and the data layer is just active. But I have to push back here, because this sounds like a disaster for a multi-brand fleet.
How so?
Well, if I manage 500 vehicles, I probably have Ford vans, Hyundai sedans, international box trucks. If every OEM has their own walled garden portal, don't I just end up with 15 different fragmented dashboards?
That is the exact friction point the industry is dealing with. And it's what Arpan Mandal addressed regarding Geotab's OEM integration strategy.
So the solution isn't 15 logins.
No, the solution is API harmonization. Platforms like Geotab ingest proprietary signals from over 30 OEM brands and translate them into a single uniform language.
So it's like a universal translator. Ford's brake fault code and Hyundai's brake fault code both become one standard alert for the manager.
Exactly. You get factory-installed hardware, but one unified data stream. And when you have that, you can uncover insights that completely alter your business model.
Like Gary Crooks's insight. That might be the most profound operational hack we saw in this entire deep dive.
The idling one.
Yes. Typically, idling is viewed purely as a fuel waste problem. A manager yells at a driver for leaving the engine running.
Right, but Gary explains that if you connect your telematics idling data directly into your customer billing software via API, the context completely shifts.
You stop looking at where a truck is idling and you start looking at who that truck is idling for.
Yes. You might be unknowingly subsidizing your top client's terrible operational habit.
Exactly. You realize specific clients consistently keep your drivers waiting at their loading docks for 2 hours, so you calculate exactly which customers are costing you the most.
And once you have that objective data, you unbundle the contract. You charge those inefficient customers a premium for excessive wait times.
And reward the efficient ones. You take a hidden cost and flip it into a direct revenue conversation.
It's the ultimate example of data moving from passive observation to active business strategy, which actually brings us seamlessly to our final theme, fleet safety.
Right, because safety is no longer just an HR compliance box. It is a major lever for cash preservation.
The dollar figures here are just staggering. Look at Stephen Lynch's case study on Walthall Oil. They were growing fast, struggling to track equipment in rural areas.
So they equipped their whole fleet with Samsara's AI multicams. And the result? They saved over $5 million in false liability claims.
$5 million. That would have otherwise walked out the door in unwarranted settlements, because now they have HD video proving their driver wasn't at fault.
No more conflicting eyewitness testimony. Plus, they fed that data into a driver incentive program, causing a 73% drop in fleet speeding.
And Bobak Sharifian shared an equally impressive story about rolling out Samsara across Universe's 4,500 vehicles.
The impact there was $1.67 million in annual accident claim savings, $1.5 million in fuel savings, and over $1 million in predictive maintenance.
Over $4 million retained annually. But the critical detail he emphasized was the culture. It wasn't about creating a surveillance state to punish drivers.
Right. The system uses in-cab audio alerts for constructive coaching in real time, correcting a harsh braking habit before it becomes a crash.
Building that trust is paramount. However, there's also a very harsh legal reality forcing fleets to adopt this, regardless of culture.
Yeah, Kelly Soderlund highlighted a recent unanimous Supreme Court ruling that just fundamentally alters the liability landscape.
Right, for freight brokers. Historically, brokers had this degree of separation from the accidents their hired carriers caused.
But this ruling obliterates that shield. The court essentially said brokers can be held financially liable for negligently selecting an unsafe carrier.
The implications are huge. You can't just rely on a gut feeling or checking a commercial license anymore.
If a broker hires a fleet and there's a fatal nuclear verdict accident, the broker can be sued directly if they didn't objectively verify the fleet's safety culture.
Documented safety data like AI alert responsiveness is now the mandatory price of admission to bid on freight contracts.
And the commercial insurance industry is all over this, too. Blessingerian shared that Motive officially partnered with Geico.
Yeah, the days of premiums based entirely on historical data are ending.
Right. If a fleet uses Motive's AI dash cams, Geico ingests that behavioral data to directly and dynamically lower their premiums.
The safer your telemetry proves you are, the less capital you forfeit to your insurer, which makes understanding the mechanical root cause of accidents critical.
Which brings us to Rob Carpenter's fascinating breakdown on rear-end crashes.
Because they're incredibly expensive for fleets. And historically, the conversation always defaults to physical engineering, right? Underwrite guards, reinforced bumpers.
Physics calculations of what happens after the impact. But Rob pointed out that a rear-end crash is almost never a bumper problem first. It's an attention problem first.
Right. The crash is born 3 seconds earlier in the cab when a driver looks down at a text message and loses spatial awareness.
And that cognitive failure is exactly where machine vision steps in. Claude Hochrottner from Geotab shared data on how their AI-powered telematics actually work.
The software dynamically maps facial landmarks and tracks pupil gaze.
It recognizes the drivers looking down at a phone before their foot ever needs to hit the brake, triggering an immediate audio warning.
And this cut driver phone use by 95%.
95%. You eliminate the phone use, you eliminate the distraction, and you prevent the crash before the bumper is ever involved.
It's just incredible tech. So if we step back and synthesize everything we've covered, from dynamic load balancing to API translation to machine vision,
what we're witnessing is a profound maturity taking hold in the mobility sector. The industry is shifting from theoretical sustainability goals to hard economics.
Exactly. Operationally graduating from passive data collection into an era of automated AI-driven action.
Which leaves us with a really fascinating question to ponder. Think about the mechanics of everything we just explored. If software handles your grid load balancing,
And an AI agent like VIC automatically sources your replacement parts.
and machine vision actively monitors and coaches driver safety without human intervention, the daily job description of a fleet manager is completely transformed.
You're no longer an operational firefighter putting out daily emergencies.
Right, you're being forced to become a strategic systems architect, designing the rules and APIs for how these automated systems interact. So the final thought I want to leave you with today is this. As the technology inevitably steps up to handle the day-to-day operations, are you ready for that shift in your own career? If you enjoyed this episode, new episodes drop every 2 weeks. Also check out our other editions on electrification and battery technology, future mobility and market evolution, and next-gen vehicle intelligence.
Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss an insight, and we will catch you on the next one.